Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second summer PD series of the event of the summer. I'm Kristen Vanderveen, and I am currently the president of NEACT, and I am really happy to see all these folks here so we can learn about self-paced science classes. I'm going to start with a brief introduction of our speaker. Liz Stewart-Miranda is a biology teacher at Greater Lowell Technical High School. She has a bachelor's in anthropology with a minor in music history and performance from Tufts University and a master's of science in archaeology from the University of New Mexico. She is an ABD from the University of New Mexico with a focus on the Paleolithic archaeology of Southwestern Europe, which she regularly applies to her in-class teaching experience, often via miming her work experience to the horror and occasional delight of her students. She has been teaching science with a focus on biology and chemistry in the high school setting for 13 years. And she has additional experience working with college-age students as well. Excuse me. She has spent the majority of her teaching career working with students for whom English is a second language, as well as with students with various learning and medical disabilities. Her goal is to teach all students that science can be welcoming, inclusive, interesting, and especially fun. Liz spends her summers writing curriculum, consulting, taking classes for an EDS program, and attempting to read some books for fun while working around her children's summer schedules. She has 2 cats and 2 vociferous dogs who you will undoubtedly hear during the session. All right, and with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Liz now.
Hi. So yeah, this past couple of years, I've switched from being a chemistry teacher to being a biology teacher. And when COVID happened, I actually had to take a year off and work to stay home with my youngest because we couldn't send him to school. So during that year, I didn't want to feel useless. So I ended up taking a lot of classes online. And one of the things I discovered by accident was a self-paced platform that I'll talk about in a little bit. And I realized that during my years of doing special ed and inclusion teaching, that I kind of was accidentally doing it anyway. So I decided to just go full on in. So I thought I would show you the different methods that I use in my classroom for self-paced teaching for STEM, and then see if it's applicable to what you guys teach. All right, so move on. So one of the things you might want to do first is actually access my Google Classroom. So let me see if I can grab, oops, hold on. I messed that up. All right, let me see if I can grab that and put it in the chat before I spoil it. Let me get the chat back up. All right, so this is the code to the Google Classroom if you guys want to get in there. Let's see, can I get myself out of this so I can see you guys log in. When you get into the Google Classroom, it should look like this. Can you see my screen? Just confirming. Okay. So, and then you're going to want to go to the classwork tab, which is here. So let me go back to the stream. And again, this is the code, which I'll paste again in the chat, which keeps disappearing on me. That is a naughty chat. Okay, I'm just going to click on the people so I can see who's joining, hopefully. I think I gave the right code. Do you all know how to join a Google Classroom? Just double checking. I'm so sorry. Oh, okay. Yes, I didn't take that into account. If anyone has a private Google account, you can actually join on your private account. This is on my work account, but I could have also created it on my private account. Keeping the same message with my school and work accounts. What's the message that you're getting? Okay. Log account, the code looks correct, but your account can't access this class. Okay, it may be because it's coming from a different school district. Oh, it may be because I did it on my school account. All right, I wonder if I can clone this on my, I probably can't do it right now. All right, that's my bad. It might be, I thought this would be okay because they opened it up to parents of students, and we've had students join this way, but it might be because I'm doing it on my work account. So that's something I'll keep in mind. Sorry. So what we'll do is for this, we'll make do with Zoom, and then we'll tour it with me showing you the screen, and we can play with things there. I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm gonna have to migrate this to my private account. All right, so we'll move on. Originally what I was gonna have you do, which we won't be able to quite be able to do correctly, is I was going to run this as if you guys were actually my students. And what I do is the very first thing I have them do is I have them join the Google Classroom, and we immediately start doing some activities. Sometimes we do silly things, sometimes we do get to know you things, and we do them all year long. It actually very much helps with the atmosphere, because part of getting a self-paced classroom to work is you really have to create a community atmosphere with your students. So what I was going to have the students do, and therefore have you do, was I was going to have you do a caption contest from this photo. Let me see if I can actually, it won't work if I have the screen either. So I show them maybe a silly, crazy photo like this one of an animal or something else related to the content area. So in biology, it would usually be animal, scenery, whatever. And it doesn't have to be real either. I've shown them silly videos of Tyrannosaurus Rexes doing dances. I showed them Spider-Man dancing in a supermarket. Actually, I believe it was a 7-Eleven. And that's an old video. That was one of those original memeing videos that occurred on YouTube. But I just have them practice their writing skills, and they do it this way because it also builds community early on without wasting a lot of class time either. All right, so hold on. Let me get out of this so I can, oh my goodness, nothing is working with me today. There we go. All right, so in the Google Classroom, because I have everything doubled up in Google Classroom, I would have had the kids go look at that picture and then go here, and they would answer this question here. Let me see if I can make this bigger for you guys. And so the assignment is to please provide a rated G caption for the picture being shown in the presentation. You may reply to each other's answers as well as go back and edit your own answer if needed. So since my school account is probably keeping you guys from logging in, why don't we do this in the chat? And so if you want, within the chat, you could refer back to the picture, and you're just doing a caption contest. And you can reply to other people's captions that they write in the chat, or you can just compose your own. So I'll put the picture back up. I'm going to keep it small so I don't keep having these hiccups. And there is our picture. Will there be a quiz on this? There will not be a quiz on this, but the point of doing something like this is really just to have the kids giggle. And in your cases, since we don't all know each other, it's to also have you guys giggle a little bit, even if it's from home. Like it? I like that book. Are you my mother?
You're not my mother.
You go blur. Yeah. Very nice. I love these. Let's see if any more come through. So we'll make do with the tech we have. Sorry about that. The other thing is I find that as I do these things with my classes, which are always just the bell ringers or the activators, the building of community by doing what it really are icebreaker activities, right? These are like traditional business icebreaker activities, is that over time, the kids get used to working with each other. So when we do get to harder work throughout the school year where they really benefit by having a buddy or a table set of buddies, they really work well together. So it's sort of like a sneaky way to build in team building without training them in team building. Yeah, I'm so sorry, I'm just reading the chat, it's great. So yeah, so I do these maybe once a week. I do rebus puzzles about once a week with the kids. I'm trying to think what else. I usually show them a video, and I'll even say something like, this is the dumbest video I've ever seen. I'm going to have you write a caption about it now. We do also do real skill sets this way too. So once they get used to each other, sometimes the activator is a graphing activity where I've created a graph Jamboard, and then modeling off of another website that a lot of people use, the graph of the week, the GAO website, I think it's gao.com. I modeled after them, but I used my own graphs, and I had them practice interpreting graphs and interpreting data from graphs from whatever unit we're in. So we do them like crazy when we're in our first unit, which is ecology, just because in biology, there's a couple of units that are huge based off of our state-based exam called the MCAS. And that particular unit has lots and lots of graphs in it. So I have them do this in a silly, low stakes way. They know they just get credit for doing it as long as they put in a solid effort. So it really helps. And that's part of this too. Okay, let's see. Did I miss anything else? Very cool. That's good stuff. All right, so moving on, let me make this bigger. I'm gonna explain a little bit more about self-paced teaching, and then we will, I guess, look through the Google Classroom together. You can see what it looks like. You can see what the different activities can be and how you can differentiate within the postings. And then at some point I will fix this and I will send it to Kristen, who can send it out to you guys if you do want access to it, since my workplace is not allowing you access right now. I'm pretty sure that's the issue. Okay. Oh, now it's not working. There we go. All right. So what is a self-paced classroom? I'm going to just minimize this for a second. Okay. It's really just a classroom where students get to decide how they want to move forward each day. And this is provided by you giving a lot of structure. So you have to create a very organized curriculum that is mapped for each unit, which means that you do have to get ahead. Last year, I started mapping stuff out in May. This year, I'm probably going to be teaching chemistry this fall. So I'm probably going to take my old chemistry curriculum and start mapping it out in August, just to get myself enough ahead, so I can do this with them too. The lessons have to be student-centric. The assignments should have different values, and I'll go over different types of assignments with different types of values shortly. Students should have choice in assignments wherever possible, so that they feel empowered and they have more buy-in into doing the work. You can structure the work so that it's for small groups or solo or both. I generally structure all of my assignments to be meant to be done with 2 kids or more. And therefore, if a kid happens to do it alone, not a big deal. If a kid happens to do it with 1 or 2 other buddies, also not a big deal. I do encourage the ones that are working with buddies to talk more though, so that they're really processing it in the social environment. You also need to allow kids the ability to skip assignments. That doesn't mean that they get freebies, that they don't lose points on those assignments. They will lose points, but you make sure they know how many points they would lose so that they're making an educated decision and an informed decision on it versus just skipping the work. And so what I found this year was that because students got to choose their own pace and got to choose how they did their work, I had a lot more buy-in from the kids, especially from those that normally would be very, I would normally see decreased motivation with. And given that this year was such a hard year psychologically for the kids, the way that the year kept bouncing around and impacting them with the different waves of COVID, I think it was a really great process that worked out really well. So to show you a little data, unfortunately, the last year I have that would make sense to compare to is school year 2020, which was the year where the pandemic started in March of that year. So with no self-paced teaching in my Q1 out of roughly, what did I have that year? I think roughly 140, maybe 144 kids. I failed 10 of them in term 1. Out of 144 this year, I failed 0. In Q2, I failed 20 kids. And in Q2 of this year, I failed 0. In Q3, we went asynchronous towards the end of the term, but prior to going asynchronous, I think I was about on pace to fail about 27, 28 kids. And this year I failed 1. And then in Q4, I have no idea what would have happened, but I only failed 1. And I failed 0 kids for the whole school year. Every single kid passed my class this year, which was sort of huge because the course that I taught this year was the course meant for getting the kids to do very well on our state-based assessment. So the kids usually hate that class. So it was huge that nobody failed, really. So before we get started, is there only one way to do this? No, there's actually a lot of different ways to do self-paced teaching. The goal for today is just to go over my approach as one model and to also help you guys brainstorm your own approaches as you need to. It's also a really iterative process with a living curriculum. And so you're going to constantly be reviewing, revamping, and adjusting your materials based off of student feedback. So don't worry if the first attempt is a little rough. Like the way that my year started is not the way that my year ended, but I was happy with both sets of my year, both halves. I kind of based it off of how the kids reacted. Did they complain a lot? Did they not complain a lot? So I found that my students this year hated projects. So instead of giving them a project for every major unit, I switched it out and I did other things with them. And that was based off of their feedback. And that was doable because of the self-pacing. And also for kids who wanted projects, I could let them do that in place of other work. So that was definitely something that made life a little easier. So where did I get my approach from? I borrowed a lot from a group called the Modern Classroom Project or the Modern Classroom Group. And when I share this with you, this is a hyperlinked URL to their website. They offer a free class that only takes about 5 or 6 hours to get through. And then you get a certification letter saying that you did the class. My model is not exactly their model, but it is close enough that I really need to credit them. You'll see why if you take their class. I actually found them through Edpuzzle. I was trying to get myself certified in various different forms of Edpuzzle. And I became an Edpuzzle coach and Edpuzzle for the self-paced classroom coach as well. And I also was sort of self-educating myself on the PBL Works format or model. And so I've incorporated bits and pieces of that as well. Additionally, I used information from various differentiated instruction courses I've taken, project-based learning courses I've taken, and random other courses from different like schools or educational websites for kids with ADHD, kids with autism, and kids with ELL needs. So this approach works really well with those kids. Okay, so this is how I do it. And then after I go through a little bit of this, I'll stop and see if you guys have any questions. So I post work at the beginning of the week. The work needs to be organized into an easy to define sequence for students to follow. So I usually number my unit. So I'll say like unit 1, whatever the unit's called. And then I also number the lesson. So it'll be like unit 1, topic 1, and everything has a name. So that helps the kids differentiate between them too. The work needs to be labeled for what kind of assignment it will be. I'll get to that in a minute. And the students should be provided with a map that illustrates for them when quizzes and tests will occur in the curriculum, which means you kind of need to know at the very, very beginning when you're doing all of that stuff. You can always change your mind if the pacing's not going as quickly as you think it should be as to when quizzes and tests will happen. You just notify the kids. So what I did is I labeled the work as at pace, ahead of pace, or below pace, which again, I completely stole from the Modern Classroom people. At pace means that the kids are working on the work that I would expect them to be working at if they're doing everything on the day I expect them to do it. Ahead of pace means that the kids are getting ahead, and that's okay. They're allowed to get ahead. And for kids to get ahead, you just establish like anchoring activities that they can go work on if they finish well ahead of their classmates. I have a really easy example that I'll show that to you in a little bit. And then below pace are the kids who are going behind pace. They're not quite going at the pace that you're expecting them to be, but they're still working. And the rule in my classroom was, as long as you're working, we don't care what the pace is. So we became facilitators. And I say we because in my inclusion classroom, I did have a co-teacher. In my non-inclusion classroom, it was just me. And that's all we did. We just made sure the kids were working. And as long as they were working well, we didn't care if they were 1, 2, 3, 4 days behind. In fact, we'd give them pro tips like, oh, you know, you're a little behind on this. Why don't you skip this thing and do this thing? And we would tell them where to do that to get the most points too. Or we give them one-on-one time to help them catch up. So this is what it looks like in the Google Classroom. This is one of my genetics units. So the roadmap is literally the map. I'll show you a copy of that in a minute. The lessons are numbered. And I would use topics in Google Classroom as a way to subdivide things. Actually, let me go to my real Google Classroom for a minute to show you. So you can see this is how I'd have it organized. This is the very last unit of the year, is the Science Fund unit. But I have topics here, and they go in reverse order. So the oldest topic is all the way at the bottom here. And I have resources for the kids. I have study resources for the kids. Resources would be things like, how do I take a screenshot on my computer? Study resources would be like websites to use for studying. And so you can come here and you can see everything's in order. We even did things like T1 versus T2 for term 1 versus term 2. And I used a lot of emojis from emojipedia.com to make it a little more visually appealing for the students. We did find things that are much more appealing to the kids tend to get finished visually. All right, so let's go to some of the bigger units. I think let's do a big unit. I was showing you genetics. So here is the genetics unit live. So the map's not showing up. All right, Google's not agreeing with me right now. There it is. This is what it would look like for the kids. I'll show you the one that I put in the show for you. And then, you know, this would be a lesson. Here's all the stuff. Here's the directions. Here's another lesson. You'll notice there's a bunch of screencastifys with everything. I'll come back to that in a minute. Here's another lesson. Again, here's a screencastify. Okay. So in breaking this down, there's the unit map, which has everything from the entire unit on genetics there. And I broke the genetics unit up into 3 different units. I have 7A, 7B, 7C. I numbered them that way. So if I was giving an end unit quiz, the kids, or exam, the kids would know that they just need to study unit 7, just to make it simpler. This is the clear sequence. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you'll note that I had assignments called must do's, and they have a little iconograph I used here, which is a picture of books. Something called the should do. Again, I used a picture for that. I used a star, and an aspire to do, which I'll talk about what that is in a minute. And I used something called sparkles in Emojipedia.
Liz, there's a question in the chat. Could you show us the
sorry. No, I minimized the chat. So let me come to that. Can you show us the unit map? Oh yeah, so that's the next one. That's right here. Let me go back here where it's bigger. So I use the game board setup for my unit map. The kids get something like this, usually set up big so it's easy to read. And it's a single slide on a slideshow. And they get access to the slideshow at the beginning of the unit. And they see their start point, they see their end point, and everything is color coded. So assignments that they absolutely have to do in order to learn the content is green, like green for go. And we call those the must-do assignments. Assignments that are extra practice so that they get to know the work really well, but you know, if they skipped it, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, is coded in yellow. And those are the should do's, because you should do them, but you don't have to do them. Again, I stole my verbiage from the Modern Classroom people, so I didn't come up with this. And then in the blue here is what we call the aspire to do's, and those are enrichment activities. So for example, if you look here at lesson 5, I have something called the Gummy Worm Punnett Square Pre-Lab, which I wrote. And it has them practice doing genetics with a bunch of different Mendelian genetics concepts and non-Mendelian concepts. So if the kids do this part, they've got the skill. But if they want to have a little fun, and because at least in my school, they actually let us hand out food to the kids. My last school, they did not. I can also have them do the lab as an enrichment activity, which gives them a lot of practice with it. That practice is very tied to the state exam. And at the end of it, they get to eat some gummy worms. So part of the buy-in, I have to admit, was bribery through candy, but they did do it. And then I also coded mastery checks. Mastery checks are teeny tiny little quizzes, and the kids can keep retaking them until they get a 70% or better. I find most of my students, because they love that they could keep retaking them until they got a really good score, would actually keep retaking them until they got 100. And I never needed to write more than 2 or 3 per topic, because they would, if they messed it up the first time, what I would do is a mastery. So as you can tell, I have everything on the computer. My mastery checks are actually on paper, and they were closed notebook mini quizzes. So I said to the kids, do not take the mastery checks till you're ready. Then they would go grab one from a table. I would just have a table set up with them, and I'd watch them like a hawk. And I'd watch them take it, closed notebook, and then I would grade it immediately in front of them. And if they got a bunch of things wrong, I would sit there and give them one-on-one teacher time. And then I'd ask them, are you ready to take the next one, or do you want to wait a day? And then they would take it when they were ready. And usually the second round is when they would just get 100. The second quiz would be set up in the same format, just different questions. Or if it was something like genetics, different letters. So that if the first round was, you know, all dominant and recessive stuff, and homozygous, maybe the second round was all heterozygous stuff. So they really had to know how to do it. In purple, I'd have the real big ticket things. So this genetics quiz actually counts for 4 times as many points as any of these mastery checks do. The mastery checks are teeny weeny. Usually by the end of any different unit, the mastery checks might add up to a quiz grade altogether, might. Sometimes it was half a quiz grade, depending on how big the unit was. Whereas the quizzes were solid grades, or if it was an exam, mastery check would be 1/8 an exam. So they don't count for very much, which is why it feels okay to let the kids keep redoing it till they get it. But the plus side was they were doing way better on the quizzes at the end. So it really helped them. So in general, the rule of thumb is that you give a mastery check when you've finished a concept. So here, I only have the kids learn up to this point, really basic genetics, real basic stuff. The kind of stuff that I probably could have given them a quiz here on day lesson 4, but I decided to give them a couple more practice opportunities before we got there. And then you'll note there's only 1, 2, 3 lessons, only 2 of which are must-dos before they get to the next one. So it really just depends on what you're doing. In my my ecology unit, there's one day where they learn the content, do the mastery check same day, because that concept that they're being assessed on is so basic that I knew they could do it after just 30 minutes exposure. But it's also a key thing they get tested on the state exam, so I really need to know if they got it. All right, so I don't see, are there any other questions before I move on? I actually do have a slide that breaks this down a little more.
Do you guys want us to type in questions or unmute and ask?
It's up to you. I'm trying to navigate both things off my little computer here. So do you have a question right now?
Are you going to talk about grading and how you're able to, do you grade the green assignments?
I grade everything.
Okay, and so if a kid doesn't have to do one of the yellows or one of the blues, how do you deal with that?
So I use Aspen, Follett Aspen used to be X2 Aspen. I'm sorry, I'm saying it wrong. I use Follett X2, which used to be Aspen X2, sorry, for grading. And what I did is, let me see if it's the next slide actually. Oh, sorry, this is just another organizer I give the kids. I'll come back to that. Let me see. I clicked on it by accident, sorry. There we go. Okay, so for classwork, I make, as you can note it just from that one thing, most of it's green. So I tell the kids that for their classwork grade, 80% of their classwork grade is the must-dos, and 10% is should-dos, and 10% is aspire-tos, to add up to 100% of their daily classwork grade. Aspen actually lets me do that, or X2 lets me do that. So I created different categories for that work, and I weighted it appropriately. So when I data enter it into X2, the kids get their accurate grade immediately. And I do grade everything. You don't have to, that really depends on you and what your student body is like. But I teach the kids who are in their 2nd year of biology, about to take a state exam, who have been labeled either correctly or incorrectly as ELL or special ed for a variety of reasons I won't get into, but it's very Massachusetts. And I work with an inner city urban environment of students who are a little jaded by the system by the time I get them, because they're in 10th grade and it's been 10 years of not necessarily being treated well. So in order to really get them to do the learning, I have to grade everything. With that said, I had a student, and I said this to the kids outright. I said, if you do just the must-do assignments, And then you score a perfect score on all of your projects, your quizzes, your mastery checks, right? And remember, they can do the mastery checks multiple times. You can get a 90 in this class. So I had a kid who that's exactly what he did every quarter. He skipped every should do, every aspire to do, because he got it. He just knew the must do stuff by the time he was done with it. And he got, you know, A+ on every single real exam, real test we had. So he got a 90 every quarter and he was happy with that. I had another student who would choose to skip that stuff, but she really wanted a 95 every quarter. So as we would get towards the end of a quarter, she'd say, how many of these things do I need to do for it to go up to 95? And so we'd sit there and I would let her watch me as I played with her stuff in X2. And she goes, okay, so I just need to do one of these and one of these. I'm like, yep, looks like it. And she goes, okay, I'll have those for you by the end of the day. Now keep in mind, I didn't care because here I am sitting there giving her tasks that she's doing great on. And my job, according to my supervisor, is to get all the kids to pass the MCAS exam. And she's showing me that not only should she pass it, but she hopefully got an exemplary score on it. I won't know until, you know, September. And why is she doing this? Because she wants the grade and she knows that this is how much work she needs for her grade. And then I had another kid who had 103 every quarter, because some of the anchor activities, in order to keep the kids busy so they won't distract the other kids, I would give them like bonus points if they did the, you know, you got ahead, here's an anchor activity. And so he never had 100, he always had over 100. He actually got an award in June for his grade. So how did he get 90%? Okay, so my grading breakdown, I just saw the comment about that, is I have the quizzes, tests, and projects in my class are 50% of the grade, and the other 50% is classwork. So if he did perfect on that 50% and then only got, you know, perfect on that 40%, 40 plus 50 is 90. So how do you deal with cheating students? Oh, sorry. How do you deal with cheating if students are taking assessments at different times? So I function in the classroom as a facilitator. If too many kids are taking the assessment at the same time, what I do is I make them sit near me and I watch them. If it's only one or two kids, then I just watch them from a distance. I try not to hover, but I do hover. And then you know how it is. Eventually you get to know your kids, you know which ones are going to be cheating. Those are the ones that you watch like a hawk the minute they grab that paper from the table. For other teachers, I believe what they have them do is they actually set up a corner in their room that becomes the test corner, and you're only allowed to take your assessments there. And that's where the teacher just hovers all day. Because the whole point of this is, since it's so student-centric, you're a facilitator. You're not really, the stage on the stage thing is 10 minutes of the day. I teach 90-minute periods, so I usually try really hard to only talk to them at the front of the room for 14 or 15 minutes a day, and that includes the beginning and the end of the day stuff. Oh gosh, questions are coming in. All right, let me see. Hold up. I'm going through those first before we hit the other stuff. Okay. Oh, there is a question. Do you do any whole group instruction in your lessons? Yes. Not often, actually. I do it, if the kids ask me. So if a bunch of kids, and this happened a lot in chemistry too. I always ran a very student-centered chemistry class. I liked the POGIL model, but I didn't actually use POGILs because it didn't work with my student body. So I modeled my own work after POGIL. You know, and the whole point of that, again, is teacher is facilitator. Teacher is not teacher. So what I usually would do is, if enough kids are like, I don't get this, then I would model for the whole class. Or maybe that was the activator of the day. So I was teaching the kids how to use the FOIL method in math for figuring out what the genes for parents should be for a dihybrid cross. And that was something I modeled in front of the whole class, but it was also in my notes so that the kids who got ahead and were capable of getting it on their own could get on their own. And those same kids, maybe I would use them as peer tutors during a lesson like that. Since students, I mean, you know this, it's so hard sometimes to get the kids to connect the stuff they learned in math last year to what they're doing in science this year, even though it's the same skill. So that would be one of those ways to do that. How many days does these lessons last? Does it tend to be within 21 days? It depends on my unit. Every lesson is meant to actually last about 30 minutes. So if when you saw, let me go back. Okay, so here I have 21 lessons for this unit. I would have had them do lesson 1 and 2 during one class day because I had them for 90 minutes. Lesson 3 was the start of the second class day, and I did model that for them because it was actually a pixel art activity. And we do lots of pixel arts, which I have to admit, I don't write most of them. There is a Facebook group called Pixel Art Mysteries, and it's meant for elementary and middle school teachers. But the pixel art is fantastic. And so what I do is I go in and I make a copy of their stuff, which they allow. It's a free website. It's a free resource site. And then I write like anything that was meant for, say, 4th grade math, I rewrite it, and suddenly it's 10th grade, genetics. So they did one that was Marvel superheroes, and it didn't work actually the same way as some of the ones that I'd already given them. So that with the whole class, they had to solve for 4 superheroes. So I did the first one with them. So that would have been part of another day. And then ending that day, they would have started one of these labs. They had a choice of which lab to do that day. So, I have 90 minutes to fill in all of my lessons because my students, their attention span is a little, I kind of design it so there's one lesson to do during the first class and one lesson to do for the second class, because my 90-minute periods are actually a double block. It helps a lot too, because it gives the kids inadvertently a moment in which they can go take a break. We want our students to take a break because 90 minutes is a very long time to sit still doing work, but I don't structure their break time. And I tell them that at the beginning. I used to try that, and it ruins it for the kids who you're structuring a break during a time of day in which maybe they're really in. So then they don't take their break and they lose their break. So instead, what we say to the kids is 90 minutes is a long time. You get, basically 10 minutes sometime during the class period to do whatever you want. If it's the beginning of class, that's fine, but we're going to track you and we're going to tell you it's time to get moving after 10 minutes. If it's the middle of class, that's fine. If it's 2 5-minute breaks, that's fine. We don't care. We find most of the kids just use the bathroom as their break time. And so they'll take 2 trips to the bathroom, which we let them do as long as they come back within a reasonable amount of time. And those that abuse it get written up, so they know not to abuse that, Okay, let me see, there's more questions. We have students who are 4 days ahead of others. What keeps them from discussing the assessments with their peers who are 4 days behind? Interestingly enough, they want to be better than everyone else. It was really kind of nice. There's that competitiveness in my CP inclusion classrooms where they really did want to be better than everyone else. And what they do is they will help their friends do the content. They don't help them on the quizzes. It was sort of amazing. So I was really worried about that. The other thing too is I don't give them back their mastery checks. They get to see what they got. If they got something wrong, I go over it with them, but I file them and I keep all of them, which ended up being quite the godsend because there were definitely moments where I forgot to data enter them. And I would be like, oh, you forgot to, it's been a week. You forgot to do this mastery check. It was due roughly a week ago. You should probably do that before, you forget everything. And the kid would go, oh no, I'm pretty sure I took it. And I would go through my file cabinet and I would find it there. So yeah, they were basically almost always right. It was very rare that I was right when it came to that. So yeah, that helped a lot because the kids would say, oh, there's a question on this, but they wouldn't remember exactly what the question was. And since the thing that they were being assessed on was exactly what the notes were or exactly what the activity was, that actually helped with it a lot. So let me see. So like, for example, all this stuff again right here is all, how do you do a Punnett square? How do you do a really basic Punnett square? So what was the mastery check? 3 questions on 3 different Punnett squares. This stuff was all about polygenic traits and multiple alleles. So what was this mastery check on? Polygenic traits and multiple alleles. So in chemistry, if I were teaching them properties of matter, which is what you would do like in your very first unit, right? Because you don't know what they remember from middle school or if they even got it in middle school. I would probably have the kids do a mastery check that was an open response question, where maybe they had to make for me, a hot meal and tell me the different steps of making the hot meal and whether it was a physical change or chemical change or what state of matter it was in. And then maybe also describe like 3 other properties that I didn't ask about. And you could give them a list, of properties you could ask them about in that. But at the end, they're expected to have written 5 to 8 sentences and that's it. And it's cooking style sentences. Step 1, chop the celery. Chopping the celery is a physical change, right? So that could be a way to do that, which would prevent cheating because presumably If it's an open response, every kid's writing a different answer. Let me see if any other questions came through. Okay, so that's that so far. And then for the anchoring activities, let me just grab that real quick, because I didn't put one here yet. Okay. Come on, Google. All right, so for kids who got ahead, I had the I'm done now what checkerboard for them to look at. I would modify it a little bit with every big topic, but it was pretty much always the same thing. It was, you know, go to Khan Academy and do one of the small units and send me a screenshot of your score of their quiz. I'll give you extra credit. Go to TED Ed, watch one of their videos and write a summary for me. Send me it to me in an email. Go to Ed Puzzle, make your own Ed Puzzle on this topic. Do you want to do the science fair, which is not officially part of our class? Work on it every time you have free time in class. You do that, I'll give you a bonus grade. Make your own Kahoot. Go to Newsy LA, read a bunch of articles, make your own questions about one of the articles that's related somehow to our topic. You know, things like this. Create your own board game, grab a practice MCAS for me. I had a couple posted online. I had a couple physically in the room, or peer tutor. And so shocks of all shocks, most kids pick peer tutoring. If I saw them peer tutoring really well, like they actually were helping the person they were tutoring, I gave them bonus stuff. But if I didn't actually see them really helping, then I didn't. I did have a couple of kids who took me up on make your own Kahoot, who took me up on make your own Ed Puzzle. They actually liked that one a lot. Who took me up on watching TED Eds and emailed me summaries. And I was shocked because I thought, oh, I'm supposed to have the lazy kids in the school, and yet here they were doing all this stuff. So yeah, I just said it had to be about whatever topic we were in. And since we changed topics roughly every week or two, it wasn't too hard to keep them busy. But yeah, they really like the peer tutoring. One of the things I did that really helped with the students with executive functioning issues was not just this, right? Which does help with that, because a kid can look at that and go, okay, I did this, this, and this, you know, I need to go do that. But I also had this, and I made this for every unit. This is the real thing. So I would share this with the kids, and they would get a copy of it. And it was set up so that as a kid went through their assignments, they could change this drop-down menu to either in progress or completed. Now, I did actually grade every single day. And thanks to everything being digital, that actually made it possible for me to get all of my daily grading done every single day. But I was shocked and I was not expecting that. So I thought the kids would actually use this to track what they've done and what they haven't done. Because sometimes Google Classroom is not accurate, right? Sometimes you can click submitted and then it messes you up because the tech is being updated that week or something. So I did have a lot of students who, you know, they were told they had to have lists to work on as part of their plan, their ed plan, to work through their executive functioning skills. And so this list already existed for them. And if I had kids who were a quality over quantity kid, they were told to only complete the green and the pink, right? Skip all the other colors. So that meant that accommodation for those students. I didn't have to think about it. I just said, do the must-do stuff. That's the stuff you need to know for our topics. If I had a kid who they were low in their WIDA, maybe they're level 2 or are low on the level 3 standard, then biology, which is a really, really verbose topic, would be a little tough. We might say to them, don't do any blues. And then we would see if they could get through the yellows. And if they couldn't get through the yellows either without ending the unit on time, then we would again say, just do the greens and the pinks, that's it. It was very helpful. And those kids did perform well on their real assessments because they had that extra time to work on it. So instead of needing extra practice, they needed extra time. And then again, kids who, if it says you need, you know, to give them 200% time to finish the unit, that might be a kid that you also go, hey, if you want to, just do the greens. It made our life a lot easier. And we had very few, I didn't actually have any angry parent phone calls this year. I did send home a note at the start of the year to give them a heads up about what the class would look like. So I think that might have helped as well too.
There was a question in the chat about what percentage of your assignments are digital?
All of them. So I made every single assignment digital, and then I provided printouts for every single kid who wanted one. What I usually did is I would make a classroom set, so that way if we had a technology issue that day, they could still do the work on paper anyway. But that also met the needs for, I have a couple of kids who they suffer from migraine disorders, so staring at a computer for a whole class is awful. I had a couple of kids who just prefer writing. So I had the printouts there for them. So we have a copy center in the school, so it wasn't a big deal. Do all teachers at your school use this methodology? No, it's actually only me and the other biology 2 teacher who I turned on to this, who also happens to maybe be my former student. So he was very trusting and willing to go through the process with me. For the students you direct to do only the must-dos, does the weighting change to 100%? Yes. And because of the way Aspen X2 is built, I don't have to do that. The program does it for me. That's if we told them that. For the kids who we did not tell them that, and they're choosing to only do the must-dos, I created a category called missing in X2, because X2 lets you create your own categories if you want to for grades, and that calculates it as a 0. So the kid sees on their report back to them on their student interface, and the parent as well, that they have a missing assignment worth 0 points. And it says that to them. So I don't know if you guys use that system or if you use something else. Like, I don't even know if it still exists. I used to use something called iPass. iPass made that a lot harder. You couldn't do that. But Aspen's pretty good. I know most Massachusetts schools use it now. So yeah, if I put the M in there, it gets marked as a 0%, brings the grade down. For the kids who we were told them to skip it, I could leave it blank, but that drove them crazy. So instead, we created a category called excused, and we just put the E in there for excused, and then it would kind of like mark it as something they don't need to do anymore when they looked on their student screen. This also helped for kids who had medicals. So this was the year of the medical. You had kids who were out for 10 days straight, wasn't their fault. And again, I lost 50% of my classes to every single rise of COVID. So between December and February, I was lucky if I had 67% of my class present at any given time, either because they had COVID or they were asked to stay home because somebody thought they had COVID. And during the time of, the rises, it would take 3 days for the kids to come back. So not all the kids have internet access at home. So for those kids, I'd say, okay, for the days you missed, just do, for this week, actually, I would say for this week, only do the green. I will excuse you from anything that's not green and not pink. And they went, okay, miss, no problem. They thought it was fair because I would cut a couple of assignments out of the week for them. Every week had at least a couple of, must or should do, or I would find a place to make room for them. So I never had a kid fight back with me. I had one kid who was out on, this is the best part. I had a kid who was psychiatrically institutionalized for a couple of weeks, and then she wasn't allowed to come back to school. And I said, I can't give you any quizzes until you do the work. And she said, I read everything. She goes, I didn't want to do any of the work. All of my notes, by the way, are interactive notebooks. I can show you one in a few minutes if you want. But she goes, I read everything. I just didn't do the work. I went, oh, okay. I said, do you want to try one of the quizzes? I said, the worst that happens is you fail it and I'll just let you retake it after you do the work. She goes, okay. She would take all my quizzes and get A's on them. So because she actually was reading everything, she was just so overwhelmed, she didn't want to do the work. And so I talked to, her guidance counselor, and I said, I know this is a little, not standard, but she's able to demonstrate that she knows it in this environment. I'm thinking I'm going to go through the test because, right, I can't, on a real test, I can't test them on absolutely every concept. I can get close, but it's hard, right? So I said, I'm going to excuse her from every single concept the test tested and just make her do the classwork on the stuff that I just couldn't get in there, but she still needs to know. And they're like, that seems fair. And the kid was ecstatic because she was drowning in work from her other teachers and she wasn't for me. And I felt pretty solid that she'd passed the MCAS exam because of what she did. So I just made her make up the other work. And so that was good. All right, okay, hold on. For the student, sorry, I'm seeing the questions come in. For students you direct to do only most students. Okay, so I did that one. Do you see each class every day, or are you on a block schedule? I'm at a vocational high school, so I have an A week and an X week group. I see A week every A week day, Monday through Friday, and then they disappear from me and they go and they hang out in their vocational shops for a week. And then that's when my X week comes in. I don't know why it's A and X week versus A and B week. But no, I don't see the kids every day. So actually, I know the state of Massachusetts says that every student is supposed to have 1 hour of science every single day, which means they should have 180 hours worth of science at the end of a school year. My students do not get that. They lose, I did the math once, I think they lose 8 3/4 hours every single month because of the vocational schedule. Can you describe your classroom management strategies, especially safety in labs, helping students with questions and proctoring quizzes and one-on-one? Okay, so let me jump ahead here. I keep clicking the wrong thing. Sorry, this is my fault. I hyperlinked a picture. Okay, so for test quizzes and projects, that's all on the other side, and I'll share this with you at some point. In fact, I'll put the share link in the chat at the end, so you guys can just grab that from there. There's a couple of different ways to do labs. One is any lab that you feel is safe enough to do for the kids to hit it when they're ready to get to it in the curriculum, you can just have the materials out for them in a lab corner and have them grab them when ready, which is what I do. As a bio teacher, I don't do really any wet labs with them. We have like 2. And all the labs I do are green chemistry labs. So they're safe to go down the drain, safe to go in the garbage. If a kid happens to eat it, I wouldn't be happy, but they won't die. And I was the same as a chemistry teacher. All the chemistry I did was green chemistry, although obviously the chemicals there, they definitely shouldn't eat. So as a chemistry teacher, what I would probably do is have a pre-established lab day where the lab day could either be a launch lab, in which case everyone's starting at the same time, so it's not a problem. I know back when we used to teach using a lot of the Flynn labs, a lot of the Flynn labs work pretty well actually as launch labs for a unit. Or we would have them at the end of the unit right before the assessment. And that's when I have all the kids catching up. So I would do the same thing in chemistry. I would probably say to the kids, you are going to have your assessment on Friday, June 15th or July 15th. And in order to get there, you have to have the following things done before Thursday, July 14th. And then you can make the lab day that day. That can be part of their review activities. So it kind of depends how you use the labs. You're using them as an inquiry activity to let them get into it, in which case, like I said, do it at the beginning of the unit, and then you don't have to worry about it. Have everything set up, tell the kids it's a lab day, you're watching them, they're all doing the same work at the same time anyway. Or you can do them at the end as a way for them to kind of sum up their learning and show what they've learned before you have them do, the paper-based quiz or test-based assignment. So that's up to you. In bio, it wasn't a big deal for me, except on the wet lab day. Usually I found that so when I show the kids how to do this stuff, I actually have a video recording of me modeling everything, and I attach the videos to everything. So in my class, I think I won an award this year from Screencastify because all of my videos I made were on Screencastify, because that's what my school has a subscription to. And apparently I made the most videos in my school this year because of that. Which I thought was funny, because it's literally just me going, okay, guys, I'm going to model this for you, or me doing read alouds for my ELL students and my special ed students. And I did it that way. The real model is you're supposed to make the kids watch every video. My students won't do that. Some of my students just want to read. Some of my students want to be read to by a live person, which in this case, they have a partner do it, or some of them watch the videos. So on the lab days, I say, you can go watch this in the video. You can go read this in the lab. But here's what you're going to do today. And I kind of summarize what they're going to do at the start of class. And every time it's a wet lab, the kids are like, well, I'm only a day behind. I'm just going to jump ahead and then I'll go backwards to do the other thing. So they all end up doing the lab on the same day anyway. You do find that the kids don't really end up being that far behind because they're kind of embarrassed. They want to catch up. So they won't do that bad. For classroom management, I actually have all of my students sit in groups of 4, which makes them much easier to observe. It also kind of accidentally forces them to work as teams. And again, all of that icebreaker work that we do at the start of every single class helps with teamwork because they want to beat each other. I do let them choose their own seats, but we obviously move kids around as needed. And I also have flexible seating in my classroom. So I might have pillaged a bunch of local yard sales for comfortable chairs and things like that because my school allowed me to. I know some schools don't allow that. I also have yoga mats so kids can lay on the floor. And I let the kids kind of sit and work with whomever they want to as long as they're working. And we do constant redirection. I walk around the class all the time. I don't sit down when I'm teaching. I find the walking around works very, very well. And I sit with the kids and sometimes I have random conversations with them. So if I see a kid who's off task and on their phone, looking at something they shouldn't, like sneakers, I will have a brief conversation with them about sneakers and why do they like the sneakers. And then I'll say, okay, this is fun, but you should probably put that away now. And I think doing a lot of that engagement activities where I talk about what they're interested in and then saying, okay, well, you know, that was our 5-minute break. We should probably switch back to working now really helps a lot. I do want them working together on all of their classwork. So that cuts back on cheating. What I find a lot of the kids do is they sit there and they go, no, you idiot, it was this one. And I'm like, oh, you know, like a lot of that happens instead of what'd you get for this? So that helps a lot too. And then again, on the assessments, if they're taking them at the same time, I stand next to them a lot because if there's a whole table taking at the same time, because they want me there too. They'll say, hey, miss, can you stay here? I might have questions. So that helps a lot. So I think when you see kids getting off task, I would show an interest in what they're off task on. And then when you redirect them, it's very subtle and kind. In terms of helping the kids with questions, I help them along as much as I feel comfortable without giving them the answer. And I'll say that to them. I'll say, well, this is asking about this. So I can tell you about this, this, and this, but I can't tell you about that. And they go, okay. Like they don't get mad. It seems really practical to them, which I like. Proctoring quizzes and one-on-one quizzes. So when I do give the big assessments at the end, the kids, like I said, are warned in advance. This is our test day. This is when we're ending the unit. You guys need to be caught up. And I'll say you have to have at least all of the greens done by then. That helps a lot. And the day before any test day, and I do this for chemistry as well, the kids get a self-paced Kahoot game to play. They get a review sheet, which now I've made in Google Forms, so I don't have to grade it. It's fantastic. Google Forms says the kid got a 34 out of 35, and I go, fantastic, you got an A. And I have a grading rubric that says, you know, for that thing, like, you know, maybe a 28 to a 35 counts as an A because everybody makes mistakes, but you did really good. And maybe a, you know, when I say 28, maybe a 22 to a 28 is like a 75% because you put all the effort in and you answered everything, but, you know, get the whole thing right. You know, I try to figure it out that way too. So they also get grades for effort. You don't get a 0 ever. If a student tries to do their work and you can see they put an honest effort in, but the whole thing is wrong, I still give them a 62. So I grade on a 4-point scale. So they get a 2.5, which is a 62. They seem to like that too, because it gives them incentive to at least try. And like I said, I have a lot of disenfranchised students, so that seems to help a lot. If we have a really bad day, I do occasionally find myself yelling at them, but it's actually been going pretty well. It's not been that bad. Okay. If any of you guys do project-based learning, this actually parlays really well into that because project-based learning actually wants you to have student-centric learning. This is an example of their gold model, which I'm just kind of learning how to do. I took a course on that, but in their regular model, it works very well. Question, any complaints from parents who feel that students are teaching themselves? No, actually, and I was shocked because I know that the parents are complaining left and right about the math teachers. I think it's because I don't follow the model correctly. So the modern classroom version of this is that the kid sits down and watches an ed puzzle. And the ed puzzle is you doing the instruction. And the kids have to do well on the ed puzzle before they move on to the next step. And I don't do that. I have the screencastify, me doing the directions and the read aloud, but the kids can choose to watch that or not. And they have to do the notes, but all of my notes are interactive notes, which has been fantastic because I have found I've been able to get the kids to do 3 times more work this year than they did 2 years ago when they were all failing. And they don't know it. They're just going, oh, okay, I don't have to write down notes. They play with their notes. And by doing all of the work, basically every worksheet I've ever wanted to have them do, I embed in their notes. And by doing that, they're reading and they're learning how to do their notes, whatever. But the nice thing about the model is every time a kid has a question, I say, you know, I know they've asked their buddy because they're all working with somebody. So I immediately go over and say, okay, what's up? And we chat about whatever their question is. And then the kids feel satisfied. So I think it's because they get that one-on-one time that they have not been unhappy. I did ask the kids this, by the way, because I said, how come you guys all complain about math and you don't complain about me? And he said, oh, well, because when we ask you something, you teach us. So I think as long as you're there to literally facilitate them and to answer their questions, it doesn't happen. I got no complaints from parents this year. Oh, there. Well, it was nice meeting you, Ashley. Let me give you the link to this thing that I have not finished because we had so many good questions, just so you can go to it later if you want to. And also because there's URLs there. I will link. Especially because you didn't get to go to the classroom. So let me get that to everyone. Sorry, somebody's leaving, so I just want to give them a link. I know this ran long because you guys had great questions. So what I was gonna do after this was have you go to the classroom, which is open, but you can't access it. So let me go to it. I'm not gonna have you do the work because we went very long, but I was just gonna show you what this looks like for us if this was us as students doing this. So lesson 1 was the information about it. And I said, oh, you've already done this together. Please move on to lesson 2. And traditionally, if this was my real classroom, there would be a screencastify of me doing the read aloud of this as well. Lesson 2 is you reviewing, and you had a choice of either doing a 5-question Google form or a 5-question self-paced Kahoot game. If you click the Kahoot game, it takes you right there. It's supposed to take you right. I think it's not working because I'm the one using it. And if you go to the Google form, you guys all know what Google forms look like. And again, the more attractive something looks or the more silly something looks, the more buy-in you get with the kids. They love that stuff. And you don't have to make all of it yourself. You can find stuff that already exists. Lesson 3 was having you guys look at assignments that I posted in my, let me show it to you this way. Nope. I must move something. Hold on here. Yeah, it's just not loading right. It was supposed to be you looking at 4 different assignments from my biology class and determining which ones you would label a must do, which ones you would label a should do, and which ones you would label an aspire to do. And I had a tracker. So you could write down what you thought and why you thought it, and then you could go into breakout rooms and talk about it together. And if we were in a classroom environment, you would do that with your small class. So notice so far we've had, choice assignment, we've had a multimedia assignment where different people work on different things. This one was going to be the question time. What questions do you have for me? In which case you just ask them there. And then the last one, I was going to give you guys time to actually work on your own assignment. I made a tracker for you. There we go. Which I will send to you. How do I do the emojis? Okay, I'll come back to that in a second. Let me finish this loading so I can get this to you guys. Oh my gosh. For Helene, unfortunately, because I made this with my work account is not letting you in. So I'm going to remake this with my home account, and then I will send this to Kristen, who can share it out with everybody if you want a copy of this. I'm sending to you right now in the chat the viewer version of the tracker here, which I did make. So I'm going to take credit for that. I made this. What you do is you just take a lesson that already exists and break down the assignments. What are things that a kid has to be able to do in order to actually do well on your test at the end of the unit? What's the absolute bare minimum? All of those are must-dos. Any activity that is extra practice for that you realize you're assigning to them because you just want them to practice the skill, but they don't have to do it to get it, that should be a should do. And anything that's enrichment, that extra stuff that we throw in there because it's fun or it connects really well to the real world, or it's just something you wanted to teach them, but you don't really have time to teach them, that could be an aspire to do. And then you decide your own breakdown. That whole 90% thing with doing the bare minimum in my class, that's me. And I decided to do that because of the types of classes I teach. I know in the modern classroom, they were suggesting that actually bare minimum should get you to a C, a 70. Which I'm sure more of you would agree with, but I knew my students wouldn't be motivated unless, really unless they could get a lot out of it. And the reality is most of my students do most of the assignments. My class averages this year were also much higher than any year I've ever taught biology before, or chemistry, actually. So I'm hoping that if I do end up keeping the chemistry sections they're assigning to me this fall, that I see that turn around with this too. Let me see if I missed anything. Okay, link was just sent to me. Okay, cool. See what is class code. Okay, how do I do the emojis? So Google does not work very well with most emoji programs, but it does work really well with Emojipedia. So as long as you log into Emojipedia through Chrome, anything that you see here, if I take this and I just grab it from here by copying it, it will show up anywhere in any of my Google stuff. So like I can put it on this slide here. Wait, lets me click into it. Oh my gosh, nothing is working for me today. I'll just put it there. See, now I have that, and then I just adjust it. And that will also work in Classroom. So if I go here and I wanted to make a new assignment, let's say I say create, I'll write a question. What made you happy today? This would help if I had no typos, right? And then the smiley face went there because I just copied and pasted it in. So as long as you're in Chrome, any emoji that pops up when you look, so like I tried DNA a lot of times. This is the only thing that pops up, and that will work. If I try genetics, that's also the only thing that pops up. What was the one that I was trying to find? I forget. There's a bunch that if you go looking for them, you will not see a picture pop up in Chrome. And so if there's no picture, it won't show up in Classroom either. And then it will be sad. Oh, now they're all showing up today for me. I will say for chemistry, there are not very many good ones. So you'll probably be repurposing things a lot. I use the DNA strand a lot. You'll see I had a lot of repeat pictures in my student classroom. Don't see the second link. Okay, let me try that again. Oh, I think I direct sent it by accident. Somebody direct messaged me. Apologies. Okay, there's that worksheet again. Yes, I can. Yeah, so one of the things I am going to show you that I did to make my life better is I actually pre-create everything in a separate Google Classroom template. This is for me. Nobody sees this but me. And everything I created this year was here so that it was easier for me when I had to share it out later to my students. So I could get myself, you know, if I had a vacation week, I could get myself pretty far ahead during that vacation week and post it here in what I considered my digital storage area. And then when it came time to share it with the kids, I would just share it out when it was the right time. But yeah, like for example, evolution, not a lot of good pictures. So this is my version of evolution. I have a dinosaur becoming a chicken, right? And they didn't have any good pictures of arrows. So I had to do, you know, old school ASCII stuff. Natural selection, I decided to go with monkey to man, and then we talk about why it's not monkey to man, but that's okay. So, because there's not a lot of stuff that actually works, but it is fun. I can't speak for other platforms like Schoology because I don't use it, but Google does allow you to do a bunch of stuff that's handy. I do know a lot of teachers also at other schools also do this. Instead of doing it with Google Classroom, we'll do it with the Google website, and they'll just create a different page so that each page is a unit, and they just put all the different unit materials there. So it's easier for the kids. But for my students, they like having a list that they can just go through, submit, check off, and be done with it. And that was the other thing. Students who did not want to do something would say, can I just submit it undone? And I would say, yes, but can you put a comment in the comment box for me so I know not to go grade it? And then I'll mark it as a 0. So it goes back to you as done, and it comes back to me as done, but there's no fake grade in there. And they're like, okay. And it's always, okay, miss, that's fine with me, miss. It was very good this year. Like I felt like I was able to bond really well with my students this year as a result, because I had so many sidebar conversations with them about random things because I wasn't killing my time at the front of the class. And I did bond a lot with them. It was like, I'm gonna really miss them this year when I get the new group. Are there any other questions I can help you out with today, or does anybody need me to resend any links? Since the classroom didn't work.
All right, well, this has been great. We went a little over time because we had so many good questions. And Liz, thank you so much for presenting tonight. We have another summer PD series event on Thursday at 1 o'clock with Sue Clemmer. And if you guys don't know Sue Clemmer, she is amazing and everything she does is really cool. She does a lot of creative stuff. So she's talking about a project, an interdisciplinary project about concrete that she did with her chemistry and physics classes. And so I encourage everyone to come to that. And we'll keep the meeting open for a bit in case people do have questions, but otherwise we'll call it a day.
So, oh, good. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Sorry we didn't get the interactive part. We had good questions, so that's all right.
Liz, this is so awesome, but it also feels like it would take like the whole summer to like make the ed puzzles and put together the things. And I mean, it feels like it's like kind of overwhelming to get going on this because you have to like know everything in advance, what you need. And
I did, but I also had already taught the class. So I think it's not so bad when it's a class that you've already created and you're just trying to change it. Like I actually ended up using a lot of the same materials I had already created. It just, I used to print them out for the kids all the time. And this kind of changed that. So now I only had to print it out for the kids who actually wanted the printouts. In fact, I had 2 different kids who for medical reasons were supposed to get printouts for everything and they refused them every time because they preferred to do them online. And I thought that was very funny. And I was terrified we would get complaints from the parents, but we never did. Again, it was for kids who had migraine disorders because Chromebooks, that screen is so tiny. And it's really just not good for kids to get migraines. All right, let me see. Sorry, I keep seeing more stuff. I'm glad everybody's happy. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to email. I kind of ended up, because I was trying to answer questions, I wasn't as organized as I wanted to be. And I'm a very organized person. All right, let me see. Can you send the link to your classroom? We can then enter the code. So my classroom is not letting people in. So what I will do is I'm going to make a new classroom and then I'll have Kristen send it out to everybody with my private account, which didn't block anybody. Does anyone teach? Oh, wonderful. I wish. I'm going to end up with CP next year. And it will be the inclusion class that doesn't have the inclusion teacher, which is pretty much what I usually get. But that sounds awesome, Gidget. Thank you, Kathleen. Is she still here? Oh yeah, you are still here. Yeah. So one of the things that this is something I'm bad about. Because I learned the kids are more likely to do it if it's pretty thing really early, that I killed a lot of my time taking things that were already Google Docs, mind you, right? Already something they could write into and share very well in Google Classroom, and converting them to Google slideshows, because the slideshows, actually they're easier for you to grade. So I realize I'm going to be killing a lot of time on that if I'm doing chemistry this year. But also it was easier to make it look pretty, right? And the kids are all about aesthetics because they're the TikTok generation. So I ended up rewriting assignments just for format reasons like crazy. And that's what killed time. If I hadn't done that, if I had just kept everything as Google Docs because they were originally things meant for printing, this would not have actually killed that much time because everything already existed. So like my chemistry curriculum already exists. It's already aligned for the NGSS. In theory, this should be really easy for me to just switch it over, especially because I'll probably set it up so that, today's lab day, you need to be ready for lab day in 3 days, and set it up like that. But I know I'm going to spend hundreds of hours making it look pretty because that's the crazy person that I am. Interactive notes, yes, I would be happy to. Let me just find a set. Oops, that would not be the right screen. I was trying to grab something. All right, find a good one. I'm just looking at something I did recently. Oh, this was a good one. All right, let's do this. Hopefully it opens properly. Everything's being a little funny today. All right. Okay, so this is my first set. This is me teaching them how to do pedigree charts. So when I have the kids do it, they keep the screen like this because I tend to put stuff on the left. So it starts off with some background info. So they're reading stuff. And yes, this already existed as a Google Doc. And then I decided to turn it into this because I knew the kids are more likely to do it. More background information. Now they have to answer questions. And they're answering questions about this slide and this slide. So they immediately get into a worksheet, which was actually a worksheet. And I just made it look like a Google slide, but this is a pre-existing worksheet that somebody else wrote and I stole off the internet. Right, so I didn't write any of the questions. This is my pro tips on how to actually interpret this stuff. And I stole this picture from an MCAS exam. The Massachusetts MCAS exam loves muscular dystrophy and color blindness as questions. Part 2, I did an escape room. And so I set it in the land of WandaVision. And now they're going to be members of the FBI trying to solve a crime. And they're going to go here to the escape room, which is Google form. And they were allowed to work with as many buddies as they wanted to. And what I actually did is I took a pre-existing activity called The Case of the Hooded Murderer, which was set in Sherlock Holmes period England, which I thought was really racist to give to a classroom of students from Lowell who can't relate to that, probably never read the books, weren't interested in it. And instead I gave them neutral names and brought it into the modern time. Again, note, I didn't actually write in most of these questions. I stole them, but I put them into the Google form. And so the first question is, what's your name? Are you working with partners? If they say yes, and I'll see where it was, then they tell me who their partners are and they work on one form together. You know, how about you do? All right. And then these questions are questions that are really standard questions about pedigrees. They have to answer them. I'm just going to pick a random answer. If they get it wrong, they're told it's wrong. So now they have to go back and they keep working on it till they get it right. So that's an example of one. I like this one, and I love doing Google Forms now because I don't have to grade them. Anything that involves me being lazier on the grading side, the better. Another one. Oh, this is a good one too. Just because I have a lot of drag and drop activities, which I did on purpose because the new digital MCAS exam for high school students has them do a lot of drag and drop. And so at the beginning of the year, the kids said, why are we doing this? This is baby stuff. And I said, okay. So I found the one practice digital MCAS exam that is available online for you to look at. And I said, what are you doing in this activity? And they went, oh, it's a drag and drop. I'm like, and they went, oh, so this will help us on the MCAS. So they thought they were doing baby work and they're not. So again, this is a dihybrid crosses. So background information, here's a picture I stole off the internet. I think I stole that from Amoeba Sisters. I grade their interactive notes for accuracy and completion. So again, if they do the whole thing wrong, but they did the whole thing, they get a 2.5 out of 4. If they get it close-ish to 75% right, and they did the whole thing, they get a 3 out of 4. And if it's like 76% or better right, they get a 4 out of 4. So I always tell the kids I round up for the most part, which they like. So they get the effort grade. So this is me going through the steps. Here's more steps. This is FOIL. And again, I explained this to them at the start of class 2 on the day that this was the at pace activity, because they were having a lot of trouble recognizing that this was for math. And they were actually doing this that week in math because they were prepping for the math MCAS on this particular week. And they went, wait, this is the same thing? I said, yes. And then this is their practice activity. So this is a drag and drop. They're supposed to grab the stuff from here, put it here. And they would all do a solid row first before they realized that every single answer was the same. And they said, why did you do that? And I said, to make it easier for you. And they're like, that's awesome. I'm like, yeah. Okay. So that was that one. This one's also a drag and drop. So they have to tell me what this offspring would look like and then find the answer here and then, you know, put it here. So white and red eyes is this one. You know, and so they're doing this stuff, which again, I did not write this question. I stole this from an online website. What I do is I find every single worksheet I ever want to do, and I figure out if I can just integrate it into the slideshows. And then I end up having them do like 3 or 4 worksheets in every interactive note set, except they do the notes in 40 minutes. They don't do 3 or 4 worksheets in 40 minutes. So it makes life a lot better. Like they get a lot more practice. We don't tell them that. They don't know that they're doing more work than they could be doing or should be doing. But it's also why like my co-teacher and I feel confident that like if they don't do the extra practice, only dinging them for 5 points for the total of their score for the should do's like feels okay because they've already done so much work by the time they're skipping that work, you know. Here's another drag and drop. Here's another drag and drop, but they get gradually harder through the activity. And then finally a last drag and drop, what should the parents be? So this is where they're supposed to foil out the parents. So what I do is that's the other thing, right? You start off with the easier concept and work your way harder. And you can grab this from anything. Like I steal a lot of worksheets from online. So I'm not the one writing these questions. I'm just synthesizing them. You could do this with your textbook. You know, that CK12 stuff that was presented last week would work very well with this model. And I was thinking about that actually when I saw it, I went, oh, this will be helpful as an option. Because one of the things I want to do this year for my class is add more options for how they show us the work. And so I'm thinking that perhaps introducing that website and using some of the biology stuff there as an alternative would be a way. Khan Academy, of course, would work very well with chemistry.
You could do formative. You could have a quizzes activity that they have to complete.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of things you could do.
Yeah. So that would work very well with this. Can we steal another? Yes. I make these templates, so that should work out just fine. I do. So for the kids who need printouts of everything, this counts as one of the things. And so for the kids who do the printouts, like I do sometimes embed videos too. And then I'll ask the kids to like tell me their like 3 aha moments from a video, right? So for those kids, they're happy because they do everything on paper and then they might just watch the video briefly. So they're only doing 3 minutes of screen time. The other thing that parlays really well into this is you really need to make sure your videos are short. The modern classroom people say that too. They say that your video should be 6 minutes or shorter, and I agree. Whether you're doing ed puzzles or you're embedding things here and just asking questions about them, the shorter the video, the more likely the kids will make it through it and do the assignment without any issues. So I actually intentionally look for short videos, and unless there's a video that's so fantastic that I can't resist it, I don't show it. So TED Ed works really well because their videos almost never exceed 6 minutes. They're almost always 4 minutes and something seconds. And there's a lot of them for chemistry, so I use them a lot. And they're almost all in Ed Puzzle now too. And I grade the Ed Puzzles. I do it by percent. I just round up the percent. Oh, you got a 69%. I guess that counts as a 3 out of 4. I'm going to make it a 75. And then they go, why'd you round it up? I'm like, why not? And they go, okay. Yeah, I see people laughing. They love it when you round up. Rounding up is very beneficial towards this because they end up getting the grade they're supposed to get anyway when all is said and done, honestly. Does anyone else have any other questions? What I can do is when I redo the classroom, which I'll work on later, I'll put a couple of random of my assignments in there so you guys have models you can pull from if you want. I'll even put a random I could put one of the pixel arts in there too. Again, I write the questions, but I don't write the pixel art. There are some extremely talented teachers across this country who do magnificent artistic things with Excel spreadsheets that I couldn't do in a million years. I'll probably post one of mine on there, actually, like one I actually did try to make, so you can see the difference. Like the kids can tell when I made it. How can we get your notebook? So I'll post a copy of that, like a copy of random stuff into the NEACT classroom that I'll go make. And then that way you guys have models. I'll call it models and you can just grab stuff from there. I'm gonna make a note. Let me do it. Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, well, the class code wasn't working. That's why I'm gonna make a new one, and then hopefully that'll get emailed to everybody. I think my workplace was blocking it. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.